Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today we're going to be talking about a bunch of NHL trade rumors surrounding guys like FILIP Zadina, EVANDER, Kane, and Tomas Hertl, and much more as we delve deep also into Frank Seravalli's new top 20 trade bait board, which offers a ton more interesting names right now on the trade market. But when it comes to guys like EVANDER, Kane, FILIP Zadina, Tomas Hertl, what is going on, what is the latest, and what are the latest NHL trade rumors right now in the NHL? Watch till the end for all of those rumors and all the latest news, and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are new. 55% of the people that are watching are not subscribed. If you like hockey and if you like trade rumors, this channel is the place to be. Now, the first player I want to talk about, and quite frankly need to talk about, is from the Detroit Red Wings in FILIP Zadina, and his situation with the Red Wings has gotten much worse really over the course of this NHL season. At age 22, the former 6th overall pick in 34 games has 4 goals, 6 assists for 10 points, and over his last 5 games, he has 0 points and is a -7, so not exactly the highest performer so far for the Red Wings, and this is a guy that I had pretty decent expectations for coming to the Red Wings system. I thought it was a pretty good fit, but obviously when it comes to Zadina, he was rushed a little bit, and it feels like with him, his production and his progression has been at an absolute stalemate over these last few years. We've been really expecting Zadina to have this kind of breakout year this year, that he finally gets some great production, is a big part of the Red Wings power play, yet that year hasn't really come. We saw signs of that last season, but it feels like with the days going by and the years going by, FILIP Zadina might actually find himself out of the Red Wings system sooner than later. And that leads me on to an article from SB Nation revolving the Red Wings from Jake Rivard, who put out a very interesting article on this whole FILIP Zadina situation, and one of the first things he says is that it might be time to move on from the former first rounder, and he says this: the 2018 6th overall pick seems to develop more questions with every answer he brings. With just 10 points in 34 games and a healthy scratch last Tuesday against the San Jose Sharks, it's hard to make heads or tails on what's going on with the forward. He's shooting at a ridiculously low 5.6%, and all of his shots either end up wide of the net or in low danger areas. Sam Gagner, who has played the entirety of the season on the 4th line, has 3 more points than Zadina has right now, and that is just insane to think about. Not just the Sam Gagner thing, but when it comes to Zadina, he's making some really good points here. It feels like with Zadina, he's kind of floating into that perimeter player type role where he does have the talent, he does have the skill, but the way he's playing, the situations he's in, and really the confidence has just not been there, and has led him to kind of be this player that kind of rovers, kind of becomes invisible. And I've heard a lot of Red Wings fans over the past week talking about Zadina being invisible. That's the word that I keep seeing a lot, and quite frankly, watching some of the games over the past couple weeks, that has simply been true. And let's not forget, boys and girls, this was a player that was projected to go 3rd overall and even rival Andrei Svechnikov at it in his draft year. And going back to that draft year, even though that was the last draft that I didn't really watch that many prospects, 2019 was the first draft that I really scouted for, I really liked FILIP Zadina from what I saw from his games. And even though I did think there was maybe some translatable issues, I still thought the offensive upside was very great. And yeah, on that play, even though the defensive mistake is important, the offensive mistake is even more important for this winger that's supposed to be this great offensive scorer. It feels like Zadina's time in Detroit is slowly coming to a close, and I would not be surprised if Steve Yzerman lets him go eventually. I mean, this was a player that he didn't draft. He didn't have any saying in drafting Zadina, so he doesn't really have that much attachment to him, and it feels like this Red Wings team is kind of advancing without him really doing much anyways. Really sad to see from a guy that had so much promise and so much potential. But now that leads me on to the next few players we're going to talk about here: EVANDER, Kane, Tomas Hertl, and even more that were projected in Frank Seravalli's top 20 trade bait board. And with Frank Seravalli, we know, especially this past offseason, how reliable he is, and his trade bait boards have been pretty solid over the last few months, and he put out a new one very recently, which was extremely spicy. And the first player he actually mentioned at number 20 on the trade bait board was, of course, one of the most controversial people in hockey in EVANDER, Kane. He's 20th on the trade bait board, and even though he was 15th in the last one, with Evander Kane, we've seen a lot go down over the past few days. Obviously, the San Jose Sharks have attempted and have successfully, at least for now, bought out his contract and terminated the contract, not bought out, terminated the contract to get some specifics out there. And we've seen Evander Kane and his camp try to file a grievance, so that whole situation is going to get a lot more messy. Personally, for me, I feel like the Sharks are eventually going to win this case, but it will be a sticky situation, especially now with the NHLPA involved. But we also have a lot to talk about with Evander Kane going to potential teams. Mixed in all this chaos of the termination, Evander Kane will be a UFA and will be a free agent, and even though I don't think anybody should sign him, there was some interest out there. Now, we did get confirmation from The Athletic that Evander Kane's 3 teams on his trade board that he wanted to be traded to were the Vancouver Canucks, the Florida Panthers, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So in Evander Kane's last contract with the San Jose Sharks, he could have 3 teams that he wanted to go to, 3-team trade clause basically, and those were the 3 teams he wanted to potentially be traded to. So those were interesting fits as well, especially Vancouver being thrown in the mix. Obviously, Evander Kane is from that area, so it would kind of make sense. And then you have the 2 Florida teams, which for a guy like Evander Kane also makes sense. So I feel like that's not really too surprising, but I do feel like out of those 3 teams, I feel like Vancouver might be the most likely to eventually get him, especially with them now rejuvenated in the playoff race and wanting to potentially add a score onto that middle 6. Now, one of the things that came up today was an article by Luke Fox of Sportsnet, who was talking about a potential fit with John Klingberg and Evander Kane with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he starts with Evander Kane and his situation, which I think is pretty interesting, and he has a few really fascinating quotes. Now, the first one to me that kind of really starts to get it going is this. As of Monday evening, more than 15 of the league's teams have expressed some level of interest in becoming the 30-year-old sniper's 4th NHL franchise. We can report, and Kane's preference naturally would be to sign with a contender, and then Luke Fox goes on to say the Leafs are a contender. Now, I want to say this right now. Having Evander Kane on the Leafs would definitely be weird, but on total, just on paper, I feel like the Leafs would make some sort of sense, especially if they could get him at a super low deal. The cap hit isn't exactly the strong suit for the Leafs right now. They don't have a lot of space, but at the same time, I feel like they can make some moves work if they really wanted to go after Evander Kane. I personally wouldn't do it because I feel like that locker room doesn't need any more distractions, but on paper, on the ice, Evander Kane would certainly be a help and would still be a great help on that bottom 6, maybe even middle 6 come playoff time. And then Luke Fox goes on to say this. GM Kyle Dubas has never been afraid to take a low-risk flyer on cast-off skill. Last season, left wing Alex Galchenyuk was scooped up mid-season and given a shot to create offense with the Leafs' best forwards. On the ice, we're taking about a 2-time 30-goal man who's hits and fights and leads all Sharks in scoring last season. Off the ice, we're talking about a strong and controversial personality who was banned from playing the first 21 games of the season for submitting a fake vaccination card, and according to the Sharks, recently broke COVID-19 protocol when he was down there in the AHL Barracuda. So that's a pretty good wrap up of what we're looking at with Evander Kane. You have that great offensive upside on paper, but when you reveal the curtains, when you go behind the curtains, there's a lot of controversy there. There's a character that, simply put, his track record has been obnoxious and horrible and just awful on a consistent basis, and he's a guy that I just don't think for the Leafs off the ice makes much sense at all. And again, going back to that distractions type of thing, this is a Leafs team that, simply put, does not need any more of it. They obviously have all the talk of not getting past the first round and not getting there, and obviously Evander Kane on the ice would help, but I do still feel like on that off the ice, in that locker room, that team still needs a lot more confidence come playoff time, and they need a lot more consistency there, which is exactly the opposite of, I think, of what Evander Kane would bring. So although you do have some strengths in bringing on Evander Kane to the Leafs, you also have some pretty big downsides that itself could also still lead to a Leafs first round exit. We'll see what happens, but it'll be a very interesting fit if Evander Kane does go there. Now, I kind of brushed aside one of those bigger quotes in this article, but Luke Fox said that 15 of the 32 NHL teams so far have given some sort of interest in Evander Kane. That is pretty big news, and that's only so far. We could see some more interest as well as Evander Kane becomes a UFA officially. So I feel like when it comes to the NHL, we could actually see some pretty big interest in Evander Kane, even though I personally think he shouldn't be signed. At the same time, it feels like a lot of NHL teams are willing to accept accept that off-ice risk. Now, I want to know in the comments down below what you guys think about this. Who do you think is actually in on Evander Kane? Would you want your team getting Evander Kane? Who do you think eventually signs him? Because again, this is almost half of the league that is in on him right now. Now, going back to that top 20 trade bait board from Frank Saravelli, there was a few names that I really wanted to get to today that I find fascinating. The first one comes in at number 17, besides Evander Kane, obviously, and the 17th spot on his trade bait board is Mark Giordano, who we talked about a couple months ago when the Seattle Kraken were initially starting to struggle about Mark Giordano potentially later down the line getting moved. And when it came to Mark Giordano and his situation, Frank Saravelli said this: Seattle Kraken GM Ron Francis notoriously plays his cards close to his vest, so there's no telling how an expansion Seattle franchise might handle trading its captain at the deadline of its inaugural season. But Francis is all class. You can bet that if Giordano's moved, it'll be somewhere he's comfortable and could help in the Stanley Cup chase. Officially, Giordano has input on submitting 19 teams he'd wish to accept a trade. So very interesting news there when it comes to a Mark Giordano move. I feel like it'll most likely be that way where we do see a Mark Giordano trade. At this point, it's the highest value he's going to have. We'll see what happens, but it does feel like Mark Giordano is a guy that could be moved, and hey, maybe even the Calgary Flames end up getting their captain back on the wagon. And then at number 1, we have from the San Jose Sharks, Tomas Hertl. And this is the last player I really want to talk about here, because Hertl, in my opinion, is probably going to be the best player traded at this year's trade deadline, unless we see Chiarot actually moved. Now, when it comes to Tomas Hertl, Frank Saravelli said this: Hertl has emerged as the most likely in-demand player as we hurtle toward the deadline. Hertl's name has already been a big topic of conversation. Hertl is unsigned, having a fantastic season. He's on pace for a career-high 39 goals and leads San Jose with 16 strikes, and will provide a significant return to the Sharks' future. The Sharks have fallen out of the race over the last month, and their playoff chances are looking slim, 16%. One team to keep an eye on the Hertl sweepstakes, and this is what Frank Saravelli says: the New York Rangers. And that quote is what really started to get me excited, because if the Rangers can load up with Tomas Hertl, I feel like that would be the perfect trade to make. Hertl has obviously been fantastic this season, getting back to true form, and come playoff time, he's one of the most consistent and underrated players out there. Look at his playoff history. He has been so key to the Sharks' success over these past few years, and I feel like for the New York Rangers, that is a centerman that they'd absolutely love to have. Now, it is a kind of good problem to have, because for the New York Rangers, Ryan Strome has been just great this season, and that is great to see on a consistent basis, but I do still feel like there's a big hole there in the third center, and if you're able to add Tomas Hertl, you would have one of the strongest center groups going into the playoffs in Mika Zibanejad, Hertl, and then Ryan Strome. That top 3 would be magnificent and would give Mika and Strome some more flexibility on both sides of the ice. With Zibanejad, he's still playing in the penalty kill, he's still having some defensive responsibilities, but with Tomas Hertl, you can add him onto that lineup, add him onto that second line, and do some amazing things. Maybe you do have Hertl on the third line, maybe you don't want to break up Strome and Panarin, but it would give the Rangers some massive options, and it would make them so much stronger in the playoffs. Obviously, you'd have to trade a boatload to get Hertl, likely a first-round pick, likely a prospect like Braden Schneider, maybe a forward prospect on top of that like Vitaly Kravtsov, but at the same time for the Rangers, I feel like these next couple of years are really the years to go for it, while guys like Lafreniere are on their ELCs, while you guys got Keandre Miller and some other forwards as well coming up and being as young as they are. To me, this is the prime opportunity for the Rangers to truly get it done. I mean, even Igor Shesterkin is in his prime right now. Right now is a great example. Adam Fox is in his prime. Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, a bunch of these guys aren't going to be as good for much longer, and I feel like for the Rangers, trading for Tomas Hertl would truly put them in that true Stanley Cup contender echelon, and I feel like 5-on-5 as well, it would vastly improve their play. Over the past couple weeks, they've been really quite poor and inconsistent 5-on-5, but Tomas Hertl would certainly fix a lot of those issues and would really give that center group so much more to work with. Personally, for me, it's a slam dunk for them, and I really hope Chris Drury is bold enough to make a move like this. But let me know in the comments down below as well what you guys think about all the players I mentioned today. Where do you guys think they'll go? Do you guys see them traded? What do you guys see the trade actually looking like with Tomas Hertl, Evander Kane, Philip Zadina, a bunch of other players as well, Mark Giordano even. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already for more trade deadline and more trade rumor content just like this. Make sure you share this video with your friends, get it out there, and click on this card for all my trade rumor content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a fantastic day, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.